7 years ago, I was an out-of-control shopaholic stuck in over $85,000 of debt. But one day as I was sitting on the floor with a freshly opened box of my absolute dream boots sitting in my lap, boots that cost more than my rent at the time, and boots that I knew I absolutely couldn't afford, I realized in that moment that something needed to change. Because if I continued the way I was going, then I was just going to be a broke girl cosplaying rich for the rest of my life. A lot of nice things, but nothing to show for it. And it was that single moment that ended up taking me on a journey that would ultimately change my life. And since sitting on the floor opening that fancy shoebox, I am now 100% debt-free. I have completely transformed my relationship with shopping and myself, but it took making a lot of mistakes along the way to get there. So today I'm gonna be sharing with you the 10 dumbest things I bought in the peak of my shopaholic era. And I'm gonna unpack why I bought them and what I learned from them so that you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. Starting with the first dumb thing that I think really started it all, and that was being a copycat. And I have an absolute vivid memory of when this started for me. I was in pharmacy school sitting in my lecture hall, maybe around 2012, and admittedly I was scrolling Pinterest when I should have been paying attention. But I remember seeing a pair of boots on what I later learned to be was an influencer, because they weren't really a thing at the time, but I saw a pair of boots that I just had to have. They were literally the coolest boots I had ever seen, and clearly I have a thing for boots. That might be a theme in this video. I'm a shoe girl, what can I say? But the coolest thing for me was that I could actually buy them. We were starting to exit the era of looking at celebrities and magazines and just wishing that you could own what they owned, to an era where anything you wanted on anybody you saw was immediately shoppable. And did that ever open up a can of worms for me, let me tell you. Yee. But I ordered them and I absolutely couldn't believe that I could do that. I was so excited to get these boots, but more importantly, I was so excited to look as chic and cool and trendy as that girl that I saw on Pinterest. Except there was a bit of a problem. Once they arrived, they didn't look on me the way they did on the girl in the photo. They kind of barely fit around my calves. I couldn't do the cool tucking jeans into boot thing that I saw in this photo. And instead of thinking things like, 1, maybe I should return these, 2, thinking that maybe these boots don't actually suit me, or what is it about these boots that I'm inspired by and that I like and that I could recreate in my own style. You would think that I would learn from that mistake, but it sent me down a rabbit hole of shopping this way for almost a decade. But the problem with being a copycat shopper is I didn't learn anything about my own personal style and what actually worked for me. I would just buy something that I liked. It didn't matter to me if it suited my body type, if it suited my colors, if it mixed and matched with anything else in my closet. I simply decided I like something, I'm gonna buy it, and then I'll figure it out later. And if it's wrong, then it just means that I bought the wrong thing and I need to go find something else. This particular buying behavior ended up wasting me thousands over the years. Which is kind of sad because even though I thought of myself as a fashion girl and fashionable, I had no idea about my personal style, what worked well on me, or simply how to buy things from my wardrobe that would actually last. I still use things like Pinterest for inspiration, but nowadays I will ask myself, why do I like this? Do I own something similar already? And what are the actual qualities of the styling that are drawing me to this outfit? It was actually only the moment that I stopped shopping that I started to develop my own personal style and the skill of getting dressed. Copycat styling can be a good place to get started for inspiration, but I think it doesn't actually teach you much about how to wear things and how to develop your own style. It's just a little too easy, and at the end of the day, I don't think it actually works. And I wasted thousands of dollars doing it. It took me so many years to figure out this next one, but once you figure it out, I feel like you are not going to look at shopping in the same way, and that is simply buying things that I liked but didn't necessarily need to own. I like to call this dopamine buying. And I don't look at this as shopping to get a dopamine hit to make myself feel better. It was really a mindset of, I have to have this. It's kind of when you see something, you absolutely fall in love with it. You have no plan for how you're gonna wear it or if it works with the rest of your wardrobe or anything like that, but you just buy it because you feel like you need it. And it took me so long to figure out that you can like something without necessarily having to own it yourself. My shopping vice of choice has always been clothing, and it took me a really long time to learn that I didn't need to own the thing in order to appreciate it. And oftentimes when I did end up buying that thing to own, I never actually wore it, probably because deep down I know the thing didn't suit me and I always felt uncomfortable in them. And I realized I was using shopping and spending money as a way to appreciate that beauty. when you don't necessarily have to. But owning more of these things didn't get me to enjoy them more either. And nowadays, because I have developed things like my personal style and better shopping skills and boundaries, I can see something that I like, but also know that it's not for me. And once you do make a purchase that you actually want, you know it's going to be a good one. And just like I often caught myself buying things that I liked but didn't necessarily need to own, once I did buy that thing I liked, then it would send me into this next spiral that I totally regret, and that is snowball buying. Have you ever gone shopping looking for one specific thing that you need, and once you actually find it, then you start to realize that your shoes don't go with it, and your bag doesn't go now, and now you need some more jewelry to go with, and suddenly that one thing that you sought out to buy turns into 10. I would do this all the time, but on steroids. And this is actually a real phenomenon called the Diderot effect. Basically, when you buy one new thing, all your old things don't measure up, so you end up buying more things to match. But I would take this to the next level where not only were the things I already owned no longer good enough, if there was something new that I bought that I actually liked, then I would be immediately searching for more things from that brand because I had now vetted it as good. So before I had a chance to even wear that new thing I bought, I would be out searching for more things to go with it. Kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill, it would just get bigger and bigger, except my snowball was made of clothes. I learned a lot from this behavior, and it made me realize that I was more interested in the buying aspect rather than the using. We often tell ourselves we buy things because we're gonna wear it here and it's gonna go with this in so many ways, where we justify the hell out of the purchase, but then we don't actually end up using it. And even though I regret this buying behavior, it really did make me start to think about the real reasons why I was shopping versus the excuses that I was giving myself. And really, you can't know a purchase is any good until you start using it. But I never gave myself that time. I just kept buying more and more and more. This next category of items I used to buy all the time, and I thought I was being smarter and more efficient when I did this, but that is buying multiples, whether it be in the same color or in different colors. Now, full disclosure, I still typically shop this way, but the way I do it now versus how I did it back then is completely different. When I was in the height of my Shopaholic era, buying multiples for me was a way to ensure myself against scarcity. When I found something that I truly liked and actually wore, I was almost afraid that it was gonna go away, so I would end up buying multiples. And on top of that, I would end up buying multiples in other colors because that's how I thought I should be creative and expressive. But I would end up buying colors that I never ended up wearing and that didn't work for me at all. But I thought by spending money on all of these backups and multiples, I was buying into some level of certainty when it came to my style. But this was actually a big mistake because it doesn't account for things like your taste changing, your style changing, or even your body changing. The mistake here for me was that I was trying to buy peace of mind and not necessarily functional clothing for my closet. And I will admit that nowadays I actually still do buy multiples, but I do it in such a way that I know that there is evidence that I'm actually going to wear it. So for example, I actually have multiples of this blazer because I love the silhouette, I love the way it looks on me, and I reach for it multiple times a week. So I decided to add it in this really cool chocolate brown color. And I reach for this one when I just want a different mood and something lighter than black. But the key here is that I didn't buy this in yellow or lime green or purple, colors that one, I don't actually really like, and two, don't work with my color palette. I don't think that buying multiples is necessarily a bad thing, but there needs to be some level of proof behind the purchase. I think one way leans into what you know you already love, while the way I used to do it was really rooted in fear and scarcity, and the fact that I just wanted to buy more shit. One of the signs of a successful shopping trip for me is actually leaving empty-handed. The fact that now I can instill the boundary and tell myself, no, this is not good enough, this is not deserving of my money, and the ability to walk away from that means that I feel like I have come so far in my shopping behavior. But for years, leaving empty-handed was a sign of a failed shopping trip, because leaving empty-handed from the mall or a shopping trip was a sign of wasted time. And I regret making these purchases so much because they were often things that I didn't care about. They were purchases that I made under pressure, and there was no intentionality or discernment behind it at all. Nowadays, if I plan to go shopping and I leave empty-handed, that to me is a sign of success. Because what that ultimately means is that there was nothing that I found that day that felt worthy of my money. The more you go shopping, I think the more you should walk out of those stores empty-handed, because being picky is a flex. This next thing I totally regret buying because I have since decluttered almost every single one of these, and it is it bags. There was a period in my shopping where I got pretty fixated on buying designer bags. One, because I used to think it was really important to show off that I had made it by what I carried over my shoulder. And I thought that carrying a designer bag would do that for me. And instead of really looking into things like craftsmanship, style, longevity, I just bought into what the trendy it bag of the moment was. I bought this bag, never wore it, sold it. I bought this bag, also never wore it, and sold it. But then I ran into two problems doing this. One is that I felt really uncomfortable carrying these bags around, and two is that these bags quickly became cringe because they were flash in the pan trends. You saw them everywhere on everybody, and not even a year later, they were no longer cool. And I even told myself things like, oh, I'll buy it in black, that way it'll be more timeless and classic. But every time I put it on, it still just felt kind of icky, like I was a fashion victim to a trend, and I just didn't think beyond that. Which brings me into my next regret that kind of goes along with this, and that is buying anything with logos on it. And that is not to say that I go out of my way to avoid buying logos these days, but I used to shop in a way that I would seek them out because I wanted to flex. I wanted people to think that I was doing a lot better than I was based on the things that I wore. So if it was a graphic tee that had a logo splattered on it, I was all over it. If it was a bag or pair of sunglasses, a belt, or a pair of shoes where if you saw it, you knew exactly what it was, I wanted that. And it was truly because I was so insecure in myself that I needed my items to share my status for me. And the saddest thing about this was that everything was a lie anyway. I was completely broke and buried in debt. I had an emotional spending problem. The image that I portrayed was not matching my bank account at all. And nowadays I try to buy things that either have no logo at all, and if it does have a logo, then I really prefer it to be as subtle as possible. As much as I told myself I don't care what people think, I really wanted them to think a certain thing every time they saw me. And buying luxury designer brands with those logos plastered on was basically my shortcut to do it. One of my favorite sayings about money is buy it nice or buy it twice. And a lot of the things you buy cheap, you may end up spending more money on in the long run because it just doesn't last. But since I was basically addicted to the thrill of spending money, if it was cheap, even better, because I could buy more of it, and mentally it didn't feel as bad because the item wasn't that expensive. But what that left me with was a whole lot of wasted money and even more useless crap that I didn't know what to do with. And a lot of that useless crap also broke and didn't last. Just spending money on stupid things like impulse buys on Amazon just because it's cheap, or even buying things just because they were on sale. I regret all the time and money that I wasted on these things, but thankfully what I learned here is that it was never the thing that I wanted, it was the deal. Oftentimes the price is more alluring than the actual thing itself, but we tell ourselves that we want the thing or we justify ways to make it useful for us. But pretty much anything I ever bought in this category with this motivation in mind was never money that was well spent. And on the flip side to that, I used to buy expensive things just because they were expensive. Figure out the logic on that one. Because in my mind, I loved collecting things just because they were cheap so I could brag about the deal. But at the same time, I would think, oh, I'm buying something really good here because it's more expensive. It was kind of status signaling in two different ways. Be impressed by me because how much money I spent, or be impressed with me because of how little. But buying things just because they were expensive was to me another way to flex my status. But especially nowadays where it just seems like everything you buy is just getting worse, just because it's more money doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. You still need to take it a step further and do things like inspecting construction, material, fit, tailoring, and you still need to assess other indicators of quality. Nobody cares how much you paid for something. And I'm not against spending a little bit more money on something that I consider good, but if I'm buying something just because it's expensive, I'd rather have that money in my bank account. I use this excuse to justify so many purchases that I ended up later regretting / never using, and that was calling it an investment piece. Oh, the investment piece. It's our favorite excuse to spend money. And I'm not opposed to spending a bit more money on nice things, on things that you know will last, and things that you're actually gonna wear. When you consider factors like quality, cost per use, construction, and longevity in your own wardrobe, then you probably will end up having to spend a little bit more money on that piece, and invest in it. I think calling an item an investment piece in many cases does make sense. But I basically hijacked the term investment piece in order to make myself feel better for spending a lot of money. And I think it's because a lot of people feel like they're going to be judged or very uncomfortable with spending a certain amount of money on something. But if you can afford it, you like it, you know you're going to use it, or it's something that you can wear for years, call it what it is. It's an expensive item that you like, and that is totally fine. We don't need to add the word investment onto that purchase in order for it to be more credible or to feel better about it. But I just played that mental gymnastics with myself all the time because I knew that that spending I was doing was wrong for my financial situation. I had a lot of financial messiness that I needed to clean up, and I knew that I was spending that money to cope with it. The way I was spending on investment pieces, I wasn't doing any favors for my wardrobe or my wallet. And if that piece of clothing is not actually making you money, then it's not really an investment by definition. And that is okay, but it's not really a term that I use to justify any spending anymore. Especially when it's spending that deep down I know I probably shouldn't be doing. But if you do want to know some things that I've never regretted buying and I think are totally worth the money, then you can watch this video next. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.